The 30th, 2016, any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, adoption. Councilor Colwell, seconded by Councilor Murray. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Unfinished business, the 5-year financial plan. Yes, sir.
We're going to continue on where we left off. With the sunshine, it may be a little bit difficult to see, so if anyone can't see, just let me know what else too. And I can read everything off. Give everyone a minute. Shuffle.
Go ahead.
So just a quick budget review of where we are at. So again, we started off with a core budget with no change to service level. Any non-core items we've shown separately for council's consideration. So we're looking at the district of a whole with the 3 funds, the general sewer and water. So each fund we need to balance the same amount of revenue to expense. And right now we're looking at having both the financial plan bylaw and the tax rate bylaw adopted on April 25th. And just a reminder again, it's council's budget, so if at any point council wants to make a change to it, we just need a council motion to let us know and we will change it. So right now, where we're at, so the core starting point is a decrease of 1.43%. Core or non-core items total 3.75% for property tax. So we're looking at a total increase for 2016 of 2.32%. We have the future years there, 2.96 for 2017, 4.17 2018. That year is higher because of the election year, and then it will drop back down to 0.20% and negative 1.5. And again, just a reminder, we have fairly new staff here, so I expect once staff have a little bit longer to go through the budget again for next year, that we'll likely see a decrease from that 4.17%, and then some changes for the future years going out. The sewer fund right now for the user fee, we're looking at essentially a 2% for the next 2 years of an increase, then 0%, 1.26%, and 3.31%. The water fee, the water user fee is an increase of 0.88%, and then 2018 at 2.86%, 1.20%, 1.22, and 1.24. And again, it can be adjusted at any time. So right now, the core budget, we have the negative 1.43%. We have not received any direction to change service levels, so we've left that as is. The non-core items that was approved as amended by Council on March 14th, as well as the capital budget was approved as amended by Council on March 14th. So Council would like the final adjustments to those items. We do have the opportunity tonight if anyone wants to make a motion to change it. So the plan for this evening is just a few items that we need to finish off. We're going to go over the sewer operating budget, look at the property tax distribution again to have a decision from council where we want to go with that. And then if there's any final questions or motions from council about anything at all to do with the budget, we have time for that this evening. So we'll look at tab 5, and council's received an updated tab 5 in their package. Operating budget for the core items hasn't changed significantly from when we looked at it before for a net change for the increase in the user fee. So I'm not sure if there's any questions on any of the items from council. So let's say right now we're looking at the 1.98% in 2016. And the one adjustment we did make is to the contingency amount. A portion will come from surplus and a portion will come from the user fee.
Any questions from council?
So if there's no questions, we'll go on for tax distribution. So So I spent a little bit of time just going over the tax distribution because it is a little bit complex to understand how the tax calculation works and the different options available to council. One of the items that will likely come forward later on this year is looking at having a council policy to do with tax distribution that will help guide councils in future years of what council wants to achieve so that you don't need as much effort every single year going through it. So what the tax multiple is the tax rate as a ratio to the residential tax rate. So for example, the business class pays 4 times the residential rate, so therefore it has a tax multiple of 4. So with all our different classes, historically we've had set tax multiples for them. That same multiple has been used every single year. So what happens is when we look at assessment, we're given assessment by class as a whole, and so we'll go in this year in particular, the residential class had a fairly large increase in assessed value, whereas business did not. And so what will happen is you leave the tax multiple the same. If any class has a higher increase in assessment, it ends up paying a higher burden of the taxes than others. So that's how it's historically been done here. Some councils do it that way, some councils don't, where the starting point would be whatever residential paid last year, residential pays this year as a starting point. There's various arguments that can be made for either. There's absolutely no right way to do it. Like I say, there's a lot of municipalities that have set tax multiples, and there's a lot that have no set tax multiples. So historically, we've had the same multiples for the classes every single year. But council can always look at that and go, we might want to set a multiple for a specific class. So council may have some decision of how do we want business in the community, and then they go, oh, I'm going to establish X multiple to try to achieve whatever you want. And so for the business class, it might be any multiple that council may wish. So the multiples can all be amended from what it historically was. We can set them the same as what it historically was, or we can have no set multiples. So it's up to council. So right now, because for 2016 the residential class was a 7.8% increase in assessment, it does end up shifting more to the residential just because they had a greater increase in assessment than anyone else. On the other side of this, if next year residential class had a lower increase in assessment, then it transfers it away from them. So that change in assessment is going to change every single year.
Councilor
Sorry, at our last meeting, you were going to provide us with the breakdown of the different classes of the rates and the taxes collected. Am I missing that here?
That was the item that we were trying to get out to council, is having a summary to do with that and the user fees. We just haven't had the time to get that, so we can add that on the April 4th council meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have.
Councilor Giselbrecht?
Just who initially established that 4-to-1 ratio, business over residential? Is that a past council? And is that embodied in some legislation like the community charter?
I'm not sure exactly who said it. I would expect it was set by council. So the community charter states that council can set any tax rate that it wants. It has to basically have some kind of rationale to support it, but it can be anything. So every year that your tax rates or tax multiples of distribution should be set by council. So I'd expect the council of the day back in 2003 would have set it. However, staff have not been able to locate anything supporting those original multiples. We don't know where it came from.
So the question then is there a guideline, provincial guideline on what that ratio should be? But it's just simply up to each municipality to set that.
Correct, yes.
And so, for example, if we had more business properties, industrial properties in Lansville, which would mean more revenue from them, that ratio could shift.
Correct.
Okay.
So some municipalities will look at it on, say, ability to pay. So some municipalities might have a lot of light industry or heavy industry, and they're going, okay, they have the ability to pay more, they're going to have a higher burden of it. You'll see some municipalities go, I want to adjust the business tax multiple, whether to encourage or discourage business. So there's all different reasons why that would fluctuate, and it will fluctuate considerably between municipalities.
Councilor Polka?
Question through the staff. Can you tell me roughly at least what the ratio is between the residential assessment, total assessment, and the business?
It's 4. It's exactly 4.
You actually talked about the assessment.
No,
No,
so
Oh, the
yeah.
assessment.
Taxation.
I don't have a calculator out here, but when we have a break, I can get that.
Okay, I'm assuming that business is pretty small.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, so 2016 assessment, residential was 738 million, business was 19 million.
Second question there, the increase in assessment, residential assessment, do we have any way of knowing how much of that is due to new homes versus increase in value?
We do. I don't have it printed off, but I have it. It's not a considerable amount in tax dollars. It's just under 6,000
For
for residential.
For new residential?
It's about 4 houses.
You don't have too
Yeah.
many.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if the assessment goes up because there's more houses and it pays more, then there's more people pay for it.
But cost for it equally.
Yeah.
So you don't normally gain anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's a difference between short-term and long-term.
Yeah, there are.
Short-term revenues will jump faster than the cost, but
They can.
as your infrastructure matures, you end up paying it back.
Oh, yeah. And that's,
So we're looking at the different options. So one of them is going again, if council wants only for certain classes, so it could be for one class up to all classes, you can set a tax multiple. The only restriction in any way has to do with the utility class. There's a regulation that sets a cap for it, so that is a tax rate of 40, and so they cannot exceed that. In the past, we've always had the tax rate at 40, so that is something that council can establish. Do we want to leave the tax rate at 40? The only thing to keep in mind is, even though we have a separate line item for library and essentially pay it somewhat separate from our own budget, tax for library gets included under that capital number. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the last option is we can set no tax multiple. So the starting point will be for all property classes. It will pay the same dollar value that it did last year. Exact same dollar value, and then in this case we have a 2.32% tax increase at the moment. All classes will have that applied to them.
Councilor Copeland?
Did we have a list of the classes given to us in the previous meeting?
Yeah, and I can email that out to council if you like.
Is it didn't we get it previously though? I'm just wondering when.
Yeah, I thought we
I believe
did.
the last meeting, there was a summary, and there were, we have a report for the property tax distribution. The other thing is I can go ahead to one of these slides, and I'm pretty sure it's all listed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
So that's what we're going to get to. So if there's any more questions, I have 3 options of motions up here just because it is a little bit complex to go through. So the first one is that this is what historically has been done. So your class 2, our utility class, the tax rate has been set to 40, which is the cap. And then there's been a tax multiple locked in for all the other classes. So light industry was 7, business was 4, forest was 3.75, recreation nonprofit 1.75, and farm 1.3. So that's what's historically been done. The other option is, again, for any or all of these classes, council can set a tax multiple or tax rate for whatever it would like. And then the final option is going, council does not set any tax rate or tax multiple.
Councilor Colclough and Councilor Hamm, and then I think Councilor Gazzola.
I know you're new, but some of the other councils have been here for a while. Have we had complaints from any particular class?
I've been here about 5 months. I have not heard of any complaints. I can follow up with staff to see if historically they've heard of any complaints.
I don't recall any over the years. Nothing specific. Councilor Hamm?
actually, it's not quite true. When the utility companies were coming in a long time ago, they had some concerns. And I believe the forestry company at one time raised some concerns, but the rates didn't really change. But I'm pretty sure we got a letter on it back in like 08 or 07 or something. But they're nothing compared to what other areas have had.
Yeah.
So are you looking for a motion tonight? Because I feel like we don't have the information. Like I don't have, I'd like to have seen that report you're preparing and
Yes. committees will,
Yeah.
whether or not they want to make a motion at this time, but. Okay. Councillor Israel?
Okay, you mentioned earlier a ratio of 4 to 1. Up here, it looks like the residential is $40, and light industry is 7, which wouldn't be 4 to 1.
So the utilities is a rate of $40 per thousand of assessment. So your class 1 is always a multiple of 1 because it's residential divided by residential, so it's 1. So for light industry, it means the rate, light industry pays 7 times the residential rate. So our residential rate for 2016, we're looking at about a 1.8, so $1.80 per thousand of assessment. The light industry will pay 7 times that per thousand assessment.
So you've identified 3 options. Can you go over them again?
Yeah, absolutely. So this would be, say, option number 1, which is this is what's been in place since 2003. This is what it is. So
that's just status quo, and whatever happens to their assessment happens.
Exactly, and every year we'll receive direction from council on this. So if council wishes next year, we can always amend these. And so one of the things we'll be looking at is again creating a policy that's going, this is council's intention. Council can change it and amend it at any point in time. It just gives staff direction when we're preparing budget, preparing tax rates, and where we're going. So the other option is going within this for any of them. So council might go, I want to set a tax multiple for whatever reason, say the business class. It locks in that multiple for that business class. It might choose certain ones and set certain multiples. It might change it, whereas last year, and historically, business has always been 4. Council might have a reason to increase it or decrease it. So any multiple that council wants for any of those items can be set. So there's certain ones you may go, we don't want to set multiple, or we may want to change the multiple. So with any of those, you can do it. And again, the only restriction is with your utility class that it can't exceed $40 per thousand.
Okay.
And then the last option is that we don't lock into any multiples. And so whatever people paid last year is the starting point for this year, plus whatever percent increase there is in the budget. So if your businesses paid X dollars last year, they're going to pay X dollars this year, and then we're going to add on
Plus
the 2.32%.
2.3%.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Copeland?
Just a question through you, Councillor Hayman. Can you just elaborate a little bit on what information it is that you would like to get?
Well, we were going to get a report that showed what the different assessments were by the different categories, what the rates, what the taxes are collected, what the implications will be if we change any of these rates. We have no idea what the impact will be to the various categories, which could have a profound impact on some categories.
I believe we had that information at the previous count. There was a two columns, 2 sections to a chart, one of which, but it was predicated on 2015 to some degree.
Yeah.
But
they're looking for a sensitivity analysis,
Well,
right?
and basically what, don't quote me on the number, 16 or 19,000 seems to stick in my head of reallocation between business and residential. If we stuck with the way that we're doing it, the residential got bigger. If we changed to the different methodology, it shifted some to the business or the commercial. Right? And like I said, 16 or 19,000 sticking in my head.
Well, I suggest we leave it at for now and then wait until we get the numbers.
Yeah, maybe think about this part of things as well. One of the things that council has in our strategic plan is doing basically an economic development study, the enhancement of the commercial and the industrial. When you establish these multiples, if I was a taxpayer, it would bother me if every year you're kind of flipping in and out from different systems. My thought process is if we're going to undertake an economic development study and take a closer look at both Village Core and the industrial area itself, leave it at status quo, what we've been doing for this year, and then once we've got that information, then consider whether or not, in consultation with the economic development study, whether or not there needs to be adjustment to encourage or discourage, depending on which way you want them to go. Rather than flipping systems now and then doing the study and a consultant says, yeah, your system's wrong, it's backwards, you should be doing it the other way. Because now we've got instability. Councillor Colson?
So what's the time sensitivity, like approving this tonight versus April 25th or whenever the deadline was.
We have another budget count on April the 4th, so we can always have the decision from council then. The idea behind the April 4th meeting is that we do a presentation to the public as a summary of where the budget is at. So part of that would be the impact of taxes, so this would impact that. So we wouldn't be able to cover that on April the 4th. I do have the chart, though, from the last how to do the distribution under the two options, so council did want to have a look at it. And if you'd like, we can always, because I think we're going to have time this evening, we can always print off another copy of the report for distribution so that council can see where the starting point is at. This is based on the completed roll. We received the revised roll over the weekend. So it didn't change significantly at all. It's very minor changes. It's just we haven't had the opportunity to get that done and have all the new updated utilities rates. Had some issues in the weekend.
So is the committee's wish.
That's your idea. That's your idea.
Doesn't appear to be a motion at this. Councillor Geisler.
Since I've been away, let me start the bidding. I'd like to make a motion that we accept option 1, or that we approve the budget according to option 1 on the chart that our Chief Financial Officer has offered to us.
Which is
Status quo. We have second by Councillor Coco. Discussion. Councillor Neary.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. I am inclined to support that motion, primarily based on what the Mayor has just said. I tend to agree that changing the status quo arbitrarily doesn't make sense to me. If there's a really good rationale for doing so, I would be willing to consider it and probably support it. I, at this point, don't have enough knowledge and experience to be able to make an informed decision about shifting the ratio. And I think you're right, that there are some things that we are embarking on that might have an influence and put it all into perspective. I'm not willing to just say, yeah, let's pick a number. I want to know why I'm picking that number, and what the relevance is and what the impact is on all of the different classes. So I think status quo just gives us that breather to decide maybe down the road if we're going to change the tax balance, to do so from a more informed point of view, for me anyway. So I'm fully on board with that.
Councillor Coco.
Ditto. I like the idea of basing it on something, and I like your suggestion of the economic development study. So I would assume then that we would actually want to do the economic development study before we adopt a policy on the direction we're going. Because I think typically what you want to do then, if there was going to be a change, is look at phasing it in over time.
Which is possible.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. That'll allow you to prepare that presentation and not say, well, we're not sure yet. Okay, next thing. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Your Worship, thank you. There was a question, I think, at the previous committee of the whole meeting on this subject, and I think it revolved around the recreational category. The question was, what do we have in that category?
Yeah, I asked that question.
Yeah. Did we manage to establish just what that applies to?
Not yet, but we will look at that and email it out to council.
Okay, thanks.
So then looking at the items is whether there's any council questions to do with the core budget or any final motions to amend the budget in any way from council.
A question just related to water. Sorry, the eyes are going. Did I read it right? And it was a few days ago I was looking at it. that the revenue for 2015 was significantly below what was budgeted?
So, the 2015 actual is not the final in here yet. The finalized year end hasn't been updated. However, that is an item that we are looking at the moment as we're updating the new water rates. The last time the water rates bylaw was updated was in 2010. And this is something that I'm currently working on to bring the report forward to council on the updated user fees. But one of the items that we have discovered is that the rate in the bylaw, the 2010 rate, did not end up resulting in the appropriate amount of revenue for the budget. So the 2015 user fee bylaw should have been updated. It was not updated. It's around 15,000 under that we collected during the year.
Okay, but when I look at the 2013, 2014 actuals, 299, 297, and now down to 269.
So the 269 is just because it doesn't have the last quarter in. So the 2015 is not fully updated.
Oh.
However, we are about 15,000 under budget because the rate was not updated last year. So we're going to make sure that all the rates are correct for 2016 so that we do end up collecting the appropriate amount of revenue.
Okay. Okay. Committee questions? Councillor Coulson.
Yep, thank you. So this goes back to the Excel spreadsheet we got in January with the detailed chart of accounts. Administration wages and benefits. For casual wages, the prior 3 years, the average was around $11,000. I'm not looking at the tab. I've got it on there. We only got this once in electronic form. So I'll explain my way through them. 2016 forward shows that amount going up to $17,000. In lieu of any accompanying justification, I move that council reduces that number to the 2015 plan number, which was $12,250.
Okay. If I might, how about if we hold off on a motion and ask staff for some explanation?
So what it is we did a detailed calculation of the cost for wages and benefits, looking at all employees how the allocation out this year. In the past, there was a lump sum. A lot of that did cover casual wages. That simply got coded to regular wages versus casual. So it's simply more accurate distribution of the cost between accounts rather than an actual increase. So in the past, it's simply like there's just a lump sum that wasn't broken out by casual employee by area, and it just got put into wages.
So it's a reclassification, not an increase.
Yeah.
Okay. Follow up.
So sorry, could you tell me the difference between 2013 then and 2016?
So 2013 was 10,496 actual. 2016 plan is 17,200.
So that wouldn't be a reclassification.
No. If I might, the classification of it in those years, if a certain individual, let's say, was technically a casual person, was always put to regular wages, you could have the same thing occurring year after year. So the reclassification is occurring in 2016, not that comparatives have not been reclassified.
So we would have casual wages then assigned not only to administration, but also all the other funds?
There's casual, which is in administration. We also have temporary employees under like transportation, public works, and then I think they also work a little bit in water and sewer during the different times of the year. But in this case, the casual is under the admin, but in the past it didn't get coded there. So in the past, a lot of the casual hours went under regular wages versus casual. And so when we did the analysis for the budget, it just got distributed out to where it would actually get coded to, or should get coded to.
But if it was a reclassification, there should be a new chart of account then in some other fund that said wages casual, right? In our detailed budget here, it shows up in admin wages, and that's it.
No, it's coming the other way. So if it was in regular wages somewhere else and got pulled out of there and put to this casual wage, it wouldn't create an extra line in those other areas. So for example, wage bucket over here, that's where the money was going previously.
Yep.
Now less money is going into that bucket.
So that means
If I
that
misspeak, by all means correct me.
that means that we weren't accounting for our casual wages improperly.
That's
They were
right.
getting blended in somewhere else that we didn't know.
That's right.
Okay.
Councillor Heem?
How many casual wages, employees are we up to now?
I believe there's 3 technically casual employees. The one has not been in quite some time. Is that correct? Of actual casual?
One, and we have on our pool availability of 3, but one hasn't been accepting calls for over a year. But the hours are unchanged. It's still the same purpose. It's just a question of casuals are for the purposes of filling vacants, overload, and they're not always available. Like they work other jobs.
So have we,
It's a bit, I don't want to mislead you to say we have more casuals, because we don't have more casual hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
so have we increased the hours of casual for the admin area downstairs?
Okay. Other questions? Councillor Gold?
This one's on page 5 of our agenda for insurance general. Under general fund, since 2013, it's a 50% increase in insurance.
Sorry, Your Worship, if Councillor Wilson could just give us a second to get the documents in front of us.
Sure. Yep. Page 5.
Page 5.
Tab 2, page 5.
Staff would have to look at that and get back to council. The increase is not much more than the 2015 budget. I believe it is a standard 2% added in there for the increase in cost. I'm not sure of the increase between like 2013, 14 to 2015. I'm not sure what happened at that point in time to have that increase.
Right.
We can email council with that.
Okay, but there's more than a 2% jump because 2013 it's 23,682, 2014 it's 24,363, 2015 actual is 30,296. So there's a 25% increase there, and then the jump going forward is another 20% or so, going from 30 to 36. Moving on then, if I may.
So is that some details that can and recognizing that the length of time staff has been here, some of those historical ones at their fingertips.
Okay. May I do another one?
No, sorry.
Under equipment, we don't see the details on here, but same page. Our contract for computer maintenance, 2013 was $17,725. 2014 was $19,562. 2015 was $19,218. Budgeted going forwards at $33,000-ish, almost a 50% increase. Question to the staff: why the significant increase?
Your Worship, that would have to do with the IT matters for both servicing equipment and dealing with the rates of hours that we've been currently dealing with keeping that part of information technology.
But why a 50% increase if we actually paid less? Actual in 2015 was $19,000.
Are you looking at the detail that was emailed to council?
Yep.
It's a full-time position. Pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So through your worship, that was due to the increase in servicing for hours. So we needed the fire department dealt with. We needed to get a few other areas that were under-maintained due to the hours that we're at. And remind council that there's an RFP that's being created to go out to the market to assess for new IT services from the department.
Okay. General comment, for an IT position such as that, that's about a $65,000 a year job. So $33,000 plus the line item that actually appears under protective services separately for computer equipment and such. It's a half-time job. For an organization of 12 people, that's ridiculous. There's no way that's a half-time job. I'm going to make a motion that we reduce the financial plan numbers for IT down to $19,000, which is commensurate with the prior 2 years.
Second?
Second discussion.
Seconded by Councillor Hain. Discussion?
Sorry, just for the minute taken. I caught the council reduces the financial plan numbers for IT down to 19,000. Do we have a line or a page or something to give it a bit more?
The line item number is 01-5-10-530.
That's an account.
Or chart of account number. Sorry.
It's been reduced from
30. Well, this year the 32,000.
So it's from 32,000 to 19,000?
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Marion.
Thank you, Your Worship. So my question to staff would be, what would be the implications of doing so in terms of the impact that would have on the service that we need and what was projected? What impact would this have? I mean, obviously the projection is there, 32,000, I'm presuming for a reason.
It's one of the motion. Through your worship, 2 points. Number one, the current person holding the IT contract was not calculating his hours in full. His indication is that he was only billing for partial hours that he was actually attending the district. I had asked him at that point to report his true hours to give us a full understanding of what the true cost of IT was at the district. Number two was the cost of installation and maintenance of new software and annual software maintenance. Pardon me, not new software, but annual software maintenance is the number that as well.
Additional discussion?
So further, so what would be the impact of reducing the projected 32,000 budget item to 19,000? I mean, that is a 30%, 33% decrease.
Through your worship, the initial obvious on the surface answer would be that it would be a reduction in service or hours billed than what we have. However, in saying that, since I've been here, I have noted that the district has had numerous issues with IT matters stemming from all different areas. Reducing levels of service based on how the IT system is built could cause the district to have issues with completing your daily work. We've had computers down for days, and that's at the current service level, hence why we're looking into a new RFP.
Councillor Colclough, Councillor Hain, Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson. Could you just give me the 2015 number again, please?
2015 number was 19,218.
And then the 2016 was 32,000? So,
Oh, yes, there it is. 33. 330. Yeah.
So just for clarification then through the staff on the decrease, at first you said one of the reasons it's going up is the previous person or the current person has been billing for full hours, but would be from now on. Plus we're going to be going out and retendering that.
Through your worship, yes, we have looked at what the potential needs are, levels of service that we potentially do require, or going out to an RFP to test the market. It hasn't been done in some time, so we should be responsible in going and testing the market.
So to conclude that then, so if we reduce the hours, then the consequences are that some things won't get done on time because you'd be waiting for.
Through worship, the contract works as we get a set amount of hours, and anything above and beyond that, we're going to pay a separate rate. So if we have to call somebody in beyond the contract hours, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to pay for a service call.
Well, I'm glad to hear we're going for an RFP. I think that's where we need to go. We need to reevaluate this whole position and what's transpiring. I'm not confident in some of the things I'm hearing. I know there's been issues in other areas in the district with IT. I've heard it from the fire department, concerns. So, it's not always just about hours you bill. So I think it's good to take it out there and get a fresh look at new service providers and get some quotes to see what the dollar brings. It's an awful high number for a small organization. I can't imagine what private industry would do for 12 people. There's no way they could pay these kind of rates. So something's not making sense to me. This is not adding up at all. So I do look forward to that RFP.
Mr. Colson.
Well, like two things. To answer your question on the private industry, I'm the IT guy for my wife's work. 22 people in that organization. IT demands not that dissimilar to what's here. 2 days a month, tops, I spend there. 2 days a month. I do email, I do software, computer maintenance, install computers, web support on other things. Anyways, 2 days a week. So, to hear that they have not been billing fully for their hours is a really weak excuse, I find, after the fact. When you look at the prior 3 years of data, it's fairly consistent. $17,700 in 2013, $19,000 in 2014, $19,000 in 2015. So the IT group's been shortchanging themselves hours for the last 3 years prior to this year. I find that weak. The other comment is, if there have indeed been issues here, which we agree there is, how can we use the dollar amount we're spending for substandard support to be our starting point for where we should be? We can't. If we're not having an efficient, effective service, you wash the whole matter clean and start from scratch. So, I made the motion for $19,000. To me, that's still about $9,000 too generous. But I'm being polite.
Further discussion.
Sorry, just one more clarification on the motion. Right now, it's got, the committee will recommend that council reduces the financial plan GL code 01510-530. I'll confirm those numbers later. Information technology from 32,000 to 19,000.
Yes.
For 2016?
No.
No.
Going forward. 2016 and going forward.
Yeah. And subsequent.
Okay. Further discussion. Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Worship. I find myself in a quandary here because I don't have the expertise that other people have in this area. However, I can see that there's an increase budgeted, and that's a concern. It sounds as if actually the service that we are looking to procure might be different. It could possibly, I'm assuming, come in below the budgeted number, especially if we were to bring RFP and we get different responses to that. I tend to be conservative in terms of budgeting. I would rather budget too much and have a surplus at the end of the day than budget too little and find that we are short for the service that we need. I appreciate the comparison with other organisations. However, every organisation's needs are very, very different. And not having the expertise to be able to assess what our needs are versus what we've got, what we're paying for and what we need to pay for, I am very reluctant to just arbitrarily reduce a projected budget number. I appreciate and share the concern that there's this big leap, this increase projected. But I find myself in a position where I'm really not able to say whether it's reasonable or unreasonable. So on that basis, at this point at least, in the absence of any other argument, I will probably not support this.
Just as a follow-up, we were elected to be the stewards of the residents' assets and to make sure they get good value for their money. I can guarantee that any person making an application under this RFP now is well aware that there's a $33,000 cap now or limit put on a budget. So the quotes are going to come in at $33,000 because we're saying that's what we're willing to pay. I think it's better to start with a lower number and see if they can provide the service at that lower number and then justify to us and to the residents why the fee should be higher. We don't set the bar at the ceiling and then hope they'll come down. We set it at the floor and hope they work their way up. And I think we approach this budgeting process all wrong, or we're going to be looking at massive tax increases.
Question to staff, does this number just include the support for the district office, or is the fire department, is the fire department a separate line?
The fire department is a separate line, however, it does include the annual software maintenance cost, so it's not just for the IT contractor. So we have different software programs with an annual amount for that is included in that.
Similar to John, I'm the one that maintains the computers in our offices. We have numerous workstations, it's on a network, numerous software packages that need to be updated, reinstalled, etc., all through the year. Maintenance of the server, along with the server software. Coming out at effectively $2,500 per computer, roughly, is way too high in my opinion. In terms of the time it takes, there's two aspects to the time. There's the physical time that somebody's there, and then there's the effective time that somebody's there. And I'd be suggesting if that's the cost, way ineffective. And that's a knowledge aspect, it's an attention to detail aspect of the computer services contractor, not a we don't have enough money aspect. So I'll be supporting the motion. Councillor Copeland.
A couple of questions. Through you to staff, did you just say that this number includes more than just the hourly rate of the IT consultant?
Yes.
What is the breakdown between the maintenance and then the service?
I don't know how to use this one.
Just roughly.
I'm paying it with $14,000 for the contract.
So then 19 would be for the maintenance? Or for the,
It's an item we can email council back to do with the breakdown of it. Just as I'm seeing a note here that there's additional amount for additional IT coming on. We do have a major upgrade happening to do with our main software program as well, so there are additional costs included in that line item to do with the upgrade that is required this year. But the exact amount for the IT contractor, I'm not sure if it's $14,000 or if there's another $7,000 on top of that or $21,000. So So that's something we can look into and then email council back.
There's also a line item under administration for contract software maintenance. And right now it's put in at $3,400. 2014 actual was 0. 2013 was 2,300.
Is that a maintenance fee or is that a contracted fee? Councillor Copeland?
Yeah, I'm thinking along the lines of Councillor Neary a little bit indecisive here because I don't feel I have enough information. And I think Councillor Coulson raises a very good question. I would like to see a breakdown of the costs and not just this line item, the other line items that are mentioned, so that we have an overall picture of what it's actually costing us and are broken down to what are annual maintenance costs versus what are IT servicing costs. Because if the IT servicing cost is actually only $14,000 a year, I mean, even if there's if an IT salary is $65,000, if they're working for a company, their charge-out rate is going to be more than that. You can eat up $14,000 fairly quickly. But the bottom line is, I don't feel comfortable making a decision on this without the information.
Councillor Swain?
Yeah, I'm along the lines of, sorry, through the chair to staff, along the same lines as Councillor Kolkoff. I don't think there's enough information in front of us to really make a good decision either way. Just so I'm hearing correctly, if you can maybe speak to it again, the reason for this increase is because things just weren't getting done and it resulted in significant catching up. Is that what I'm hearing?
Through your worship, a couple of notes. The initial discussions with the contractor was that he was, in effect, not billing out the hours that he was actually doing. Had indicated several instances of that. At the same time, yes, there's the district software has been and hardware has been struggling more than it should. And so because of that, we've incurred more hours than we would on a normal basis. So there's been a couple of issues that staff have been grappling with for some time. Fire chief has also come on board and has indicated that his struggles have been the same as inside staff as well. So there's, not to belabor the point, but this is why we come to the conclusion that we need to go into an RFP to establish what our scope is, what our needs are, what our requirements are, and what our equipment, software, and hardware servicing needs to be. So.
And just a follow-up with respect to the RFP process, what would staff recommend as being the ceiling? If we're going to set a ceiling to this, what would you recommend that ceiling to be based on maybe some preliminary research today?
Through your worship, and maybe I'll ask the director of finance to chime in, but generally with an RFP, you don't put a budget item in there. You generally let the market provide you with a cost estimate, breaking down not only the general cost to service the municipality, but things for emergency call-out rates, regular call-out rates, different types of servicing levels to provide that to you in a package, similar to, for instance, Coors Engineering, which lays out costing according to what they need to do. So we let the market deal with that.
Sorry, maybe just wasn't clear. Just a concern was that if we say, it's worth $33,000, we're going to have all these people proposing, their price at $33,000 for the services they're going to outlay for the district. So what that suggested, like if we're going to reduce this to $19,000, would that not give you enough room, or?
Through your worship, that's why staff goes out to an RFP, is we don't know how much this is going to put back to us at. When we receive responses back for an RFP, we don't have to accept any of them. We look at them and we judge them based on certain criteria, certain levels, price being one of them. So we don't have to, if we're not satisfied with what we've been provided based on the price point and the service level, then we have a couple of choices. We have to come back to council and say, this is what we received and this is what the cost you received. Say everybody's over. We didn't put that much money in the budget. We can come back to council. If it's under, well, we don't have to come back to council at that point because you already earmarked and approved that amount of money. So to give you an estimate as to what it's going to cost, from our standpoint, that's really up to those people that bid on the RFP.
Thank you.
Councillor Copeland?
Along the same lines, what sort of terms of reference do you give somebody then to bid on?
Through your worship, we provide a scope of work, scope of services in regards to what the district's needs are in regards to software and hardware maintenance. We've actually got one that's sitting with the director of corporate administration right now that's ready to go out. It's just in the final stages, I believe. So it lays out in regards to what we need, what we want, when we want it, how much service we need, what our information technology service looks like. Currently, what we're hoping we can achieve, whether we're happy with where it is, it needs to go up, down. We lay out those parameters so they have a clear understanding as to what they're bidding on.
Councillor Coulson?
Are we doing time and materials or fixed bid for this?
Sorry, some base was in my ear. My apologies.
Are we doing time and materials based or fixed price?
I have yet to talk to the director of finance on that in regards to what we're going to ask for. So,
Okay.
We would likely be looking for a fixed price. The reason being when it comes to IT is I find it puts more pressure onto the contractor to get things done as efficiently as they can. Whereas if they can't get it done in the time that it should reasonably take, is on them. The cost is on them to do it. So that if someone comes in and it's taking them hours to do something it shouldn't, we're then not on the hook for that. So usually what will come in is we're going to go, we have this number of servers, this number of computers, how much is it going to cost to server it? Anything additional would be on top of that. So if there is something, be involved, but as we're looking, say, to do the AV upstairs for the council meetings, something like that, you may be charged a fixed rate on top of it because it's an unusual item, but all the day-to-day would usually be a fixed rate. It just protects the municipality so that we don't have these huge fluctuations and it puts pressure on them to get things done.
No, and I agree, because otherwise you're just asking for an hourly rate from someone and hoping that they're effective, efficient, and working to the best of their abilities. On the flip side of that, the challenge with the fixed price quote is you have to have a very detailed RFQ or RFP so that it completely outlines what you're looking for, and the price is an agreement, because then you get into change orders or whatever we call it, and then there's usually quite a premium for that kind of work. So, I'm glad to hear that we're looking at a fixed price one, but the challenge then becomes ours to have a very tight RFP proposal put out there.
Okay, a couple options here. One, we could vote on the motion. Two, there's been a number of people mentioned that they don't feel comfortable without additional information. We could defer this motion till the next COW. It will put a little bit of a wiggle room, if you want to call it, in the presentation side, but it would give staff the opportunity to provide council with that additional information if they so choose. So what's council's will? Either vote on the motion or make a motion to defer to April 4th?
Yeah, it'll be on Monday evening.
Councilor Hain.
Oh, I'd like to move it to April 4th. Until we get that additional information.
Okay. Moved by Councilor Hain, seconded by Councilor Kolkoff. Discussion? Councilor Coulson?
Yeah, just one more thing. The last meeting, I made a question through to see if we could get the current contract or terms of reference that were being developed for the new contract. I'd still like to have that through to council if we could, just to review as part of that information.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. I'd like to make what I consider an easy motion. I move that we reduce the grants in aid for 2016 to the amount so awarded, which I think is $1,250 or something like that.
That's something that makes sense.
Councilor Hain?
Could you repeat that so I can read it?
We reduce the grants in aid for 2016 line item down to what we've actually awarded.
Well, I don't know.
And I don't remember, was it 1,250? Is it 750?
250 plus 500, yeah, so it's
750. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next. Councilor Coulson.
Sorry. The contingency item. I don't know if it must be on here.
Which one?
There's just a general contingency line item of $40,000.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I know we're not allowed to plan for a surplus, but we're allowed to put in a contingency item. The net result is the same thing.
Okay, but I believe, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, this is funded from surplus. So it's not affecting the taxation number?
So we're taking 40 grand a year from surplus to put into a contingency line item.
There's the possibility if needed.
Yeah. So we've taxed for it in prior years.
Correct.
And so to keep our surplus at a fixed level then, we would have to tax at $40,000 to keep our surplus the same, otherwise we're drawing down surplus.
If we use it,
Right.
recognizing that the way staff explained it at a previous meeting is when they went through the budget previously, they've identified a number of areas where they budget they budget $12, which was $10 that they expected to spend, and $2 just in case.
Yep.
And instead, the approach staff now has been to put that into one number instead of having a bunch of little contingencies all around. There's one contingency number.
Okay.
Question to staff, though. Authority to spend that comes from staff or from council?
To an extent, both. We have a purchasing policy in place, so if it was a large dollar value item, it would still come to council for consideration for any of the items.
And below that, it's the guy in the purple shirt. Yeah, I just noticed that. Yeah. Was there a hand? Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Okay. Can I ask one now about the permissive tax exemptions for the railway? Seems like a timely one, given a lot of press on that.
It's not really related to the budget, noting time.
Isn't it? If we want to reduce it?
We can't change it. We've already voted on Pacific as permissive tax exemptions for 2016.
Okay.
Mr. McBride?
Through your worship, the director.
So the 2016 permissive tax exemption bylaw is already done, it's already locked in for the year, we can't change it. However, for 2017, that's going to come to council later in the summer. So that's absolutely something that is considered in the summertime, is whether they want to issue a permissive tax exemption going forward or not.
Just for information for those members of staff who recently joined us, the property tax exemption bylaw for Island Border Foundation is for a 10-year term. So it won't be decisioned annually. It's locked in for that 10-year term, and it's left me the expiry date, but we can provide that to you.
2011 it was approved, I
I think
think.
it's 2021.
I was going to say, I thought it was 2022.
But it's just a bylaw. We can remove bylaws.
Yeah, during the regular meeting, during the updates, I'm going to make some comments with regards to Island Quarter Foundation and kind of what's transpired to some degree. Certainly, in the future, as part of it, I think council could get information in that on the ability to change that bylaw if need be, recognizing there is another party that is somewhat relying on it. And also our trails exist, and I believe we have an agreement with Island Corridor Foundation that relates to the trail, and I believe there's something in that about permissive tax. If they don't get it, there's another mechanism. But that's information for another day.
Okay. Okay.
Further discussion.
Can I make one more?
Yeah.
So, just a general comment at first. On the way we approach our core budget discussion here, last year we left it to the end as well, and it got shortchanged. This year we're in a similar position. We keep hearing it's council's budget, but we just get presented the core budget and don't really get into the details of it. I would like to see, and I'm going to make a motion to this effect shortly, is that we see a staff report accompanying the core budget presentation that speaks to any deviations greater than 15%. There's lots of small items in here that I won't have time to go through, but memberships go from $2,400 to $7,000. It's not a huge dollar amount, but you repeat that 6, 7, 10 times, whatever the number is, it adds up. And there's quite a number of occurrences of that in this detailed budget. I don't like working that way, and so I'm happy to approve something at a higher level if there's a deviation report that clearly spells out why more money is asked for. So my motion would be, future core budgets to be accompanied with a staff report explaining deviations greater than 15%.
Second by Councillor Neary. Discussion. Councillor Colclough.
On the surface of it, initially, it sounds like a good idea to me. I'm just curious as to what implications there may be to the staff. And I guess that part of that is also, I know one of the things we've been going through is a lot of changes because of new staff, and hopefully things are going to get shaken out this time around, and there won't be so many changes in the future, but I am curious as to what the impact might be.
Don't know what the changes are going to be next year, so maybe not.
No, and that's kind of the comment that I have to be making, Your Worship, is staff are redeveloping things. We're redeveloping the finance department. We're redeveloping how we do business in certain areas. So to be able to tell council what one more report and one more report and one more report will do, I can't. That's something where eventually we come to council and say, what do you want us to take off the list? So again, if this is council directing us to do it, we do it. We just have to find a way to do it, and that means the staff will present the council with we can or we can't do it. So I can't provide you with that. What I can provide you with right now is that our finance department is at full tilt.
Councillor Neary.
I think it's a good idea. It doesn't have to be an elaborate report. The Excel program that calculates the percentage difference, the only thing I would do is maybe set a dollar limit on it. Because you could get a 50% change on a $100 or $200 item, right? It could have doubled. That's 100%. You know, I would set a threshold of maybe a couple of thousand, and that way we're not wasting time on all the little stuff. If it were meaningful, I think it would not be a big report to do, because in the past we've always heard it's just a 2% cost of inflation. So realistically, most things are going to be under it anyway. So I don't see it as a big problem.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for a big tome on this too. You know, like the computer maintenance discussion we had. That's a pretty obvious one. You know, you've already gone through the effort of deriving the number. Add a quick comment of why, and then if it's material, you know, there might be 10. How many occurrences? 10, 15 occurrences of that through a budget. It shouldn't be a massive time consumer.
Mr. McCray.
If council wish, just gonna wait for the Harley to pass by. Or the cherry bomb. If it would help staff immensely if council were to set a threshold as council, that way we wouldn't be looking at $100 and $200 options, which was the concern initially before the motion was out. A few $1,000s would assist at that point, given the bulk of our business exists in that province.
Okay. Councillor Neary.
So on that basis, I amend the motion so that the percentage amount is amended to an amount in excess of $2,000, an increase in excess of $2,000.
So in addition to the 15%?
No.
Just 2,000?
Well, because 2,000 is your threshold of 2% on $100,000.
Okay. If I might, before I look for a second here, if you go to just dollar number, there are going to be some big dollar items that, like wages, is such a big number. 5,000 on the wages is like, who cares? No offense to the taxpayers. And so I think it needs to be a combination of it, where the 15%.
I will take assistance on the wording.
Basically, the 15%, provided the different exceeds $2,000.
Okay, gotcha.
So you look at the percentage first, and then the dollar figure.
Okay. So, does Ms. Coates have that?
Not totally. So the main motion that's on the floor was that council instructs staff to provide a staff report with future core budgets explaining deviations over 15%.
And greater than 2,000.
And the amendment is by adding and greater than
2,000?
Okay.
There's second for the amendment. Councillor Colclough, any discussion on the
or
amendment?
resulting in an increase.
Increase greater than.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on the amendment?
Sorry.
Councillor Cole?
Yeah, I'd almost prefer a low clamp on the number. So by that I mean, so if the budget number is X, everything below that falls out. And then anything above that, if the deviation is greater than 15%, there's a little comment.
But in effect, you're going to get that.
Well, but no, if it's a $5,000 item, 15% $750. Might be material or not to us. But if it's below $5,000, something could go from 2 to 4, and it would fall off the radar.
Yeah, but
That type of thing?
myself, well, your 2 to 4 wouldn't make it because it's not greater than $2,000, right? It's got to meet both thresholds there in that respect.
And or however we're doing.
And recognizing that for each of those ones that exceeds it, and as much as we create a report, staff can create reports, that explanation and the research into that explanation to make sure that it's accurate is going to take time. And so, I would suggest why don't we do some, let's call it baby steps.
Sure.
And say that, and if it turns out there's next year a number of items identified that don't quite meet the threshold, but a desire for explanations, then we can adjust that threshold. That's just a suggestion. Any additional discussion on the amendment? All those in favor?
I'm sorry, we didn't get the seconder on the amendment. Was it you or?
Councillor Hall.
Oh,
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Back to the original motion as amended. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Councillor Haynes? Councillor Bolton? You stop? Okay, I got one. That contingency number. $40,000 unidentified specifically, but again, like I said, how staff came up with them. And I don't know. Hey, thank you, Mr. French.
I didn't see it. Didn't have my glasses.
Montreal for meetings. When it comes to the standpoint of having that contingency in there, I fully understand why staff has done that. In fact, I prefer that rather than having a whole bunch of things kind of buried, for want of a better way to say it. Having said that, there's another contingency sitting in that budget, and that's council discretionary. There's nothing identified specifically with it. And this is separate from the $9,000 for the Port Theatre side of things. To use a basic term, it's kind of like a slush fund. And from my standpoint, what it does to a certain extent is it makes it so that council doesn't necessarily have to go through the same thought process with regards to spending if they so choose to use it. We put as a requirement on staff. And I would suggest that if a one-time item comes up that was unintended or not predicted, that's what that $40,000 is for. So I move that the staff, council discretionary amount of $10,000, that line item be removed through the budget. Second by Councillor Polson. Discussion. Councillor Polson?
Sorry, the one thing that's jumped to me, Mine Town Day, that wasn't funded from discretionary. No. So it's strictly the $9,000 item that no one's separated out.
Yeah, the 9's separate.
Okay.
That's why it's not in that one.
Right, because our actual expenditures for 2013 on that chart of account were $14,300 in 2013. 2014 was $9,300. 2015 was $9,000. So in 2 or 3 years, we've barely done anything like that. Yeah.
Councillor Herring?
Has the question's just been answered.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Last question?
Councillor Hayden?
Through you to staff, why do you support theater, which is now a line item under Parks and Rec?
I would just thought we would have made that under general admin or something.
If council wishes, we can absolutely put it under the council admin section.
That's where I think, I don't really think it's a Parks and Rec issue. We really have no influence on it.
Keep in mind, all parcels pay the parks amounts, so.
But if it was in the water fund, or does it, depending on the fund it's in, does that impact who's taxed on that?
Yes. Well, no. with things like fire department and parks and rec and general taxation, no. If you start to get down to water fund or sewer fund, then yes. And with regards to why it was in general fund originally, is it was part of the incentive to go down the path of negotiations with the city of Nanaimo, and there was a recognition that security of water affected everybody. So it was put under general fund as opposed to specifically the water fund. Okay.
So, was there a conclusion on that? Should I go something with this?
Yeah, we'll move it to general.
We need a motion. The original motion didn't, to separate it out, the original direction didn't say where, so you guys are. Okay, anything further? The staff need further direction at this time. Okay, which gets us to public participation on the budget. Nothing else. Going once, going twice, 3 times. Motion to adjourn. Councilor Geselbrecht, second by Councilor Colclough. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 10 minutes.